Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Douglas Otieno. We will wait for some 1 minute so that we allow other members to join, then we will start. Thank you. Feel most welcome. In the next 1 minute, we will start. Just some few seconds, then we are starting. Okay, thank you. My name is Roy Douglas Otieno. I'm from Kenya. I'm the director of Tinada Youth Organization. I'm one of the DPOs working in Kenya under Innovation to Inclusion project. And we'll be here discussing more about, we are focusing a lot on from ticking the box to thinking outside of it. And that is the major thing that we are targeting. We want to see how we can think around outside the box in terms of involving the public, the government, and different stakeholders in moving towards active participation of OPDs in disability decision. And anytime I've talked about OPDs and DPOs, they are more or less the same thing. They're the same thing because OPDs is organization of person with disability, and DPOs is disability person. It depends with which area you're coming from. Like in Kenya, we use DPOs. I know other countries we use OPDs, so they are the same thing. Most of the time, you will get me talking about OPDs or DPOs. Thank you. Next slide. So before we start, let me take you through housekeeping and logistics so that we understand what's happening. And thank you and welcome people who are joining. I'm seeing we have a good number. So this event will provide international sign interpretation. For those who like to have the multi-pin option enabled, please contact the host through the chat box.
I'm very sorry, but the sign language interpreter is not seen because you have to spotlight both the speaker and the sign language interpreter. Currently, everyone is only seeing the speaker. Great. Okay. Please spotlight both the speaker and the sign language interpreter. Otherwise, people will only see the sign language interpreter.
Thank you. I'm working on it.
Great.
And Gardiner is already in the spotlight.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And you can also activate the real-time captioning as subtitle here in Zoom or through the external link provided in the chat box. Kindly go to the chat box, you will see. All attendees are in listening only mode with camera off. And I think most of our attendees, you can see that. Please use the chat box for technical questions and the Q&A box for content question. If you have any question, kindly just write on the chat box. We will respond to them. I'll be having a number of speakers talking, but if you have any question, kindly just write it on the chat box. We'll address it. The meeting is being recorded and will be shared online afterwards. A post-event survey will be launched automatically after this webinar, and this will help us to improve our future activities, including the webinar. So kindly, immediately we are done, I will request you to fill the survey. It is very short. Next. About i2i program. i2i is Innovation to Inclusion Program. This is a 3-year project implemented in Kenya and Bangladesh, and it is supported, funded by UK government, Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. The project aims to deliver direct and sustainable change for women and men with disabilities in Bangladesh and Kenya. As I said earlier, the project is targeting Kenya and Bangladesh and targeting women and men with disabilities by supporting to wage employment in private sector, and it is led by Leonard Cheshire with diverse group of international local organizations. The program is run by, is led by Leonard Cheshire, and there are a number of organizations which form a consortium. And the reason why I mentioned about the OPD and DPO is that the program is ensuring that it reaches the grassroots level, whereby it's working with OPD or DPO. Kindly don't forget to tweet during the event. And we have a number of organizations that you can tag. Thank you. As I said earlier, my name is Douglas Otieno. I'm the director of Tinada Youth Organization. Tinada Youth Organization is one of the DPO working in Kenya under Innovation to Inclusion Project, and we are based in Kisumu in Kenya. The project is being implemented in 3 counties, Kisumu, Nairobi, and Mombasa. Now, Kenya is divided in 47 counties, so it's being implemented in 3 counties. And I'm also the convener of Kenya Adolescent and Youth Mental Health Coalition. And also, I'm also a member of a national focal point of GNDR. The GNDR is a global network of disaster risk reduction. And also the coordinator of Meta Kenya CSO Alliance for SRHR. And I'm also the board member of International Federation of Settlement and Neighborhood Centers. Today, the reason why we are here is to discuss about more inclusion, not thinking outside the box, not inside the box, but ensuring that participation is fully and effective. That is the reason why we're here. And today we'll be talking about consultation of organizations of persons with disabilities in decision making, and how far this meaningful participation as required by the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That is a guiding framework that we all use. And I should mention that sometimes we say OPD and sometimes we say DPO. For those who have come late, they are the same, they mean the same thing. DPO is Disability Person Organization. OPD is Organization of Persons with Disabilities. They are the same thing. So if I mention, any of us mention that, then kindly know that they're the same thing. First, we will have to hear DPO perspective from the Bangladesh and Kenya. So we'll have a conversation between Bangladesh and Kenya. Then we'll also hear about engagement of OPDs in the new disability strategy being developed by UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And we have a team here who will be representing this. This will be followed by insight into OPD engagement ahead of Global Disability that is going to happen next year in February. And then we will take the questions from the audience. So kindly, if you have any question during the discussion, kindly ensure that you have it inside the box so that we will discuss it. I'm going to welcome Jahan Hera Began Hena from Bangladesh so that we can check on the perspective from Kenya and Bangladesh OPDs. With that, I want to introduce Hena, who is known as Hena. She is the General Secretary of Alliance of Urban DPOs, Chittagong, a partner OPD of Innovation to Inclusion Project. They're one of the DPOs working in Bangladesh. She's also president of Women Disability Development Association and executive member of District Disability Right and Protection Committee in Chittagong. Her key interests are in education, disability, development, women empowerment, and gender. Let me introduce Hena and welcome Hena. Welcome, and kindly just say briefly on what you do in Bangladesh.
Thank you. Good evening. Hello, everyone. This is Jahanara Begum Hena. My organization name is Alliance of Urban DPOs in Chittagong, AUDC. It's a local organization for persons with disabilities. Here, we are working for persons with disabilities since 2009 in this Bangladesh. So we are now working with i2i as a DPO partner in Chittagong. Especially I'm a visual person, and my organization whole member are persons with disabilities differently able. So thank you again to share my experiences here. Is a big platform to give opinion about this OPDs or Bangladesh. So
thank you, Anna. Let me ask you, can you give us an overview of the work that you do and some of the experience with DPOs has been consulted in terms of decision making? Because I know that we work on i2i program, and sometimes the government consult you, or sometimes consult the government. What is your experience in this?
Thank you very much. Actually, we are working for persons with disabilities last 10 years in the Bangladesh, and we are trying to raising our voice about the rights of persons with disabilities. Actually, you know that Bangladesh government already signed UNCRPD, and also Bangladesh has a law according UNCRPD 2013 law, as well as national policy also we have. People with disabilities, actually, if I say how to involve in this process, involvement, if I say persons with disability involvement is sometimes is very high, sometimes is not involvement because of the government and other department do not searching the DPOs, do not call us for participation. But when we started our journey in the i2i in Bangladesh, you know that it's a very unique project for our country. Here 10 DPOs already we connected, involved in the i2i project. So i2i, you know, already you are mentioned that i2i is working for persons with disabilities, UNCRPD 22 and 28 articles to implement the Bangladesh and Kenya. So through this project, we are involved, our government, some activities like we did some activities with government level and advocacy level, and also field level.
Thank you so much. Like for example, in Kenya, we work with number of DPOs, both grassroots at county level and national level, and we do a lot of work. Okay. And you will get that, for example, Kisumu, where I'm coming from, the county government requested us if we can help them to support the development of the disability policy to review, because the policy doesn't stipulate what is in the UNCRPD. And that consultation is vigorous, and it is involving everybody without leaving no one behind. How about Bangladesh? Is there a situation whereby the government has consulted with DPOs to support or in terms of decision making, in terms of including bringing everybody on board? Is there something that has happened in Bangladesh?
Okay, thank you, Douglas. you know that Bangladesh government signed and has law, but sometimes we do not see, we cannot participate the mainstreaming program. You know that because of which is national program. There are our government who are organizing the program. You know that that they are sometimes they do not they do not call TPO. Sometimes they call NGOs. So here we actually discriminated from the others sectors, and government duty bearers and in implementation level are very low. They cannot actually monitorize our all activities. Has law, but implementation is not perfectly due to our system. Okay.
And is there a framework in Bangladesh that focus on the persons with disability, like the one in Kenya? We have a framework at county level and at national level. And because, you know, anytime we want to do advocacy, we want to push the government in an equal partnership, is that we use a policy or a framework that need to be worked on. Is there a framework that your country is working with?
Oh, do you repeat, please?
Yes, in Kenya, we have a framework, that a policy that tells more about implementation and delivery of programs based on disability programming. I'm asking if we have one, you have one in Bangladesh that you work with as a reference.
Okay, actually, Bangladesh are already framework. You know that Bangladesh government 2019 national policy also, but here also we organized a program at level. So, but people who are persons with disabilities, they are not actually 100% involved in the programming. Okay.
Okay.
But who are,
then,
yes,
okay,
you can.
Hannah, thank you. I would also want you to get your perspective. Can you give us a couple of specific examples of consultation over your DPO? And I'm talking about an instance whereby you do things when you're doing activities, they went on successfully, and at some point you do advocacy and it's like you wasted your time.
Okay, actually, which is I want to share our advocacy through this i2i in locally or nationally. Last 1 year, we advocated many different type of government level and online or offline, which is very something is very effective or something is not actually effective yet due to COVID-19 situation. I just want to share it. In Chittagong City Corporation, in Chittagong City, where I situated our organization, we advocated some different type of government organization and non-government organization corporate level. One is very much effective advocacy, which is already we did the in Chittagong City. Actually, we our government sector, where first time we talked to them by phone due to COVID-19. We cannot connect them, but we're trying to by phone or mailing. But lastly, when we failed by phone, we try to call by physically. Then they were very positive attitude with us, and they cooperate us actually in government sector. And we finally, after 3 or 4 months later, we'll conduct a meeting with them, and they already agreed with us. They will provide some persons with disability for employment. Okay, this is the one thing. Another thing is Chittagong is a big commercial city. Chamber of Commerce is also big organization. There were also finally conducted a good advocacy program with them. We cannot connect with them due to by phone, but later they will conduct with us, and finally we virtually advocacy meeting with them. Okay.
Thank you so much. And I know you participate a lot in number of platforms and as DPOs. What are some of the key challenges that you face during those participation?
Thank you. It's a good question. You know that persons with disability every moment are facing challenge and barriers in our society, in our family, in our offices, everywhere. You know that. When we try to implement our activity, actually, it's the first barrier or challenge we felt. COVID, due to COVID situation, we cannot connect the government and other sectors. Okay, so that time, first time they are not giving floor to conduct meeting. It's a very big challenge for us, and already you know that every work has a duration and timeline. If we cannot contact with them, actually that time we are very much disappointed. They are giving time or not, we can conduct or not. This is the very much difficult for us that time. Okay. Finally, when they give time to for a meeting, that time after finishing the meeting, we said, okay, we're done. Okay. But when they do not give the time for sitting time, I think this is the very big problem. And you know that some duty bearers are not positive for persons with disabilities. They are not aware of our laws and our policies. That time, because they are not conscious, they cannot attitude for persons with disabilities. Yeah.
Thank you. And I know number of challenges that especially during this COVID, and is being faced by DPOs and especially persons with disability. And I thank government of Kenya because they have already developed a system, especially on supporting persons with disability, and you will get that there's even an allocation in terms of money that was released to support persons with disability during COVID-19 because number of people lost jobs. And based on the challenges that you've mentioned, can you tell us briefly in the next not more than 1 minute, tell us more about the solutions of these challenges that you face?
Okay, thank you, W. You know that everything, if every work is challenge for us, especially who are women with disabilities, who are persons with disabilities, who are kind of various disabilities. Okay, so everybody has different challenges, but how will overcome the challenges? You know that Bangladesh government has law, but law and policies, but this is not our implementing yet. That's why OPDs engagement have to grown locally or nationally or internationally is the first thing. Another thing is policy and act have to be implemented. For that reason, we have to monitoring system will be developed or create, and collaboration. DPO's engagement will be increased government or international level or local level. I think it's very important for OPDs and other sources.
Thank you. And you are moving to where I was moving. I wanted to ask you, what steps do we need to ensure, all of us as DPOs, to ensure meaningful and effective, not only meaningful, but meaningful and effective participation as DPOs, as your way forward?
Okay. Actually, if meaningful participation, you know that when government take initiative for persons with disabilities, I think, and this is my opinion as a DPO, government have to be inform us according to the law here how many DPOs are working in Bangladesh, and monthly or quarterly, if they call us to what happening in the Bangladesh or what happening in the region. And you know that there are 2013 law, Disability Rights Act, in this perspective, district level has a committee. If the committee will be work actively, I think persons with disability will be engaged, not only engaged, will be meaningful engaged through this implementing the law. Another thing is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to add that it is very important to have all the cohort, all the sectors on the table, and everybody on the table, including persons with disability. And one thing that we have to do as public is to ensure that anytime there's leadership position, then we also need to sit in this table. We also need to sit in committees, and not a matter of sitting in this committee, but ensuring that the interest of persons with disability are also taken in and implemented. It is not about a matter of participation. It is a matter of participating and ensuring the implementation. And thank you so much, Anna. And I really appreciate your contribution and the work that you do in Bangladesh. And I think we have an all idea. Everybody here is having idea on how DPOs are normally being consulted and how they participate in decision making in Bangladesh. And I think continue with the work that you do, and we all need to embrace that. Thank you so much. Let me get back to hear more about perspective from UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And remember, we are talking about from ticking the box to thinking out of it, moving towards active participation of OPDs in disability decision making. That is our agenda. Allow me to introduce Rachel, who is the lead technical advisor on disability inclusion for UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and has been leading disability inclusion strategy refresh. And this one that we participated just last week in Kenya. Rachel previously led the scale of disability inclusion across the Department of International Development. She has worked in the inclusion space for the past decade and is an awarded scholar. In her personal life, she is highly commended patient advocate on mitochondrial disease for muscular dystrophy UK. I will also introduce Harriet Knowles, who is also from the same FCDO. Harriet has worked at the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, for 3 years, most recently as a program manager on disability capacity building, where she manages an FCDO program on the capacity building of OPDs. She has worked in disability rights and inclusion for over a decade in both UK and internationally. Harriet and Rachel, thank you so much for this, coming to hear you talking about the refresher on the review of the framework on the strategy. Kindly tell us more about this and how we can all participate in it and how it's going to involve a number of stakeholders and benefit communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Douglas, and thank you, Hannah, for your contribution earlier. It was really interesting. So I'll just start with saying that at the moment at the FCDO, we are building on the legacy of the DFID disability strategy and championing the meaningful participation and consultation of people with disabilities and OPDs. And we are on a journey. We are not always going to get it right 100% of the time when we're consulting with OPDs. And we're really grateful to be part of this discussion where we can also have the opportunity to learn from you all. As Douglas mentioned, we are currently refreshing our disability inclusion strategy to make it more relevant for our newly merged and newly created organisation, the FCDO. And we started in October and we are running till tomorrow. And we have done 13 consultations with OPDs, working through our partners such as ADD, Leonard Cheshire, Sightsavers, IDA, DRF, and the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum. We have gathered together OPDs in Nigeria, Kenya, Bangladesh, Uganda, and Indonesia. And we've also heard from a more global context through our partners, the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum and the International Disability Alliance. At the consultation meetings, colleagues from the FCDO presented on the strategy, what we were aiming to do and the areas that we were refreshing, and invited comments from the OPDs via plenary and group work. And we have been gathering together the feedback into a report, as well as feeding in the guidance from the OPDs into the strategy. OPDs have also been sending us their written contributions. Throughout this exercise, we have been learning a lot about consulting with OPDs and how to work with our disability partners to achieve this. We've reflected that we need to institutionalize a process of consulting with OPDs at FCDO. At the moment, it is happening on an ad hoc basis with our central disability team and in some country offices, but not all. We need to get better as FCDO at planning for consultations and making sure there is finance available for paying for reasonable adjustments and travel expenses and other costs that OPDs incur when they consult with us. And we need to ensure that when we gather feedback as donors, that we are gathering the right feedback and feedback that we can act upon. We need to put in more careful consideration to what our asks are of OPDs and what we are asking and why we're asking it. And crucially, how will we use the feedback on the contribution to affect change? We have also heard from the OPDs that having a relationship with our global agenda as a big donor that works across the world is really important. But what OPDs really want to prioritise is more engagement with our country offices and our international development programmes. And we are thinking through internally, how can we create the right conditions for this to happen? We have found that having pre-meetings and informing the OPDs on what we want to consult on is really important, and that was something that was very appreciated by the OPDs. And we've also experienced a number of challenges with connectivity, internet access, things like that. And we were wondering internally whether hybrid meetings where someone from the UK is dialing in remotely to a meeting elsewhere, if there are other ways that we could explore to get feedback that are not always a sit down or a hybrid meeting. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Rachel Keane, who's going to talk us through a little bit more about how we have been using some of the feedback from the strategy. Thanks, Rachel.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Harriet. Welcome, Rachel. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
It says the host has stopped my video, so I'm not able to start it. Ah, there we go. Start my video. Wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think Harriet has covered so much there, but I would like to expand a little bit on how we have used all the feedback we have gathered through our consultations and the challenges that has faced in terms of going forward as well. So the consultations have been directly informing what we are writing in our new strategy. They have led to us introducing new areas, looking at climate change, expanding beyond women and girls to look at more inclusive equalities and looking at more on the intersecting and compounding discrimination impacts for people with disabilities who experience different identities and overlapping identities. As well, we have introduced an area on inclusive health and looking at COVID-19 response and recovery. All of these areas have repeatedly come up in our consultations. The other particular thing we have been trying to do is in this new strategy, we have been highlighting the importance of reflecting the priorities and the perspectives of people with disabilities and the organizations. We know we have an obligation to obtain and deliver on these, but we also know that there is a long way from where we are right now to where we would like to be in the ambition of this new strategy. It has been difficult for us ensuring that the consultations are equitable, particularly when we have been doing high-level consultation and many of the really pressing issues for the OPDs are very much on lived experience in local areas. And that is why, as Harriet pointed out, one of the key things that we have been looking at how we can support is making sure those OPDs are well connected to our country offices and looking at how we can support our country offices from the centre of the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office. Moving to two-way participation is certainly something we are trying to reflect in not just our what we call thematic areas, such as education, humanitarian action, and so forth, but also we have been trying to pull it out far more for looking at those essential principles for the participation, representation, and leadership of people with disabilities and their organizations as we look at mainstreaming and where we would like to be. However, we recognize that this is a process for us as well as an outcome, and we're trying to balance our ambition with pragmatism. And what this will involve is working very closely with our partners, particularly over the next year, when we move from that high level ambition to starting to look at our delivery plan, which is really more, how do we operationalize what we are doing, and looking at what would good look like, what would best practice look like in the short term, as well as the intermediate term and the long term, as we work to try and move towards consultation, towards two-way participation, but recognizing the constraints that our partners, the OPDs, as well as we face in our own organization. Looking forward, we know that working with our partners and OPDs is really critical as we go towards that full, active and meaningful participation and inclusion. And something we also really want to do is prioritize reflecting the full and diverse range of people with disabilities, particularly the most marginalized and underrepresented, and those who may fall often outside the disability movement and disability organizations. But again, this is an area where we are very much learning and listening to our partners and the organizations we are working with. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Harriet and Rachel. And that's a very good, well explanation. Checking on this review, the refresh, I know the document, the framework is from, the strategies was from 2018 to 2021. And right now we are looking forward to develop 2022 to 2030. What are you seeing coming on new to add value to this strategy, especially with focus to leadership? Because any change comes as a result of effective leadership. And also because of COVID-19 has really released a lot of information, especially on mental health. In terms of mental health, leadership, and COVID-19, what do you see this strategy need to look like to support the entire community, to support stakeholders, and even to influence other partner stakeholders and the government to support this?
As a person who's holding the pen on the strategy, I'm happy to take that. I think they are all really critical areas that have come out so openly in all of our consultations across all the countries that we've been working with. Certainly when we wrote the strategy in 2018, it was a very different world. And even within our own organization, we were running the Global Disability Summit. And so we were really a big priority, and things are different now. However, the importance of participation, inclusion, and leadership has become more apparent than ever, particularly in consultations when we have seen where people with disabilities have been in COVID-19 responses very early on, and the impact that has had in more effective responses for all. Clearly, COVID-19 has had a devastating and disproportionate impact on people with disabilities. So that is reflected across all of the strategy. Mental health, we had a commitment on mental health in our last strategy. And because of that, we have developed a completely separate strategy just on mental health and psychosocial support. And we are working very closely with the teams on that to make sure that is something that we are looking at. But yes, these areas are now, explicitly in our strategy. They are at the very forefront, but what is going to be the challenge is as we move into looking what that delivery looks like in terms of working on country levels. But you did mention about working with partners. A big section and something that is critical to our work is what we call our external engagement, which is when we work with multilateral organizations like the UN, like the GLAD network, as well as the work we do with bilateral, so with other countries directly. And the National Disability Strategy that the UK did on disability, that was led by the Prime Minister for all government organizations, committed our organization, the Foreign Office, to continuing its global leadership role and influencing our partners. So it is a priority for us.
Thank you so much, and that's a very good response. And we see this document when developed, it's going to support a number of countries. And I'm also just one question about moving two-way participation, because that is what we are checking. Effective participation means that it's not about sitting on the table, but ensuring that any decision made there are part and parcel of the team who are on the table, and ensuring that there's implementation. how is this strategy going to ensure effective leadership at all levels? I want to talk about all levels because leadership starts from family. Thank you.
Yes, and I would like to pass to my colleague Harriet to expand on this, but I would say that where we have that principle of participation and inclusion, we do explicitly say it is from the local to the international. It must start at family life all the way to international systems, but that is still something we're working towards, and I'd really like Harriet to input on this one.
Yes, Harriet. Welcome, Harriet.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Douglas, for the question. I think, yeah, just to build on what Rachel has been saying about the importance of having a holistic approach to disability inclusion that looks at a number of different levels, including within the home and with the community. I think the other thing that we could look at and discuss today is also about kind of power dynamics within the sector. How can we ensure that our NGOs, our NGOs, that the FCDO works with also include organisations of persons with disabilities in their plans, and how as donors can we incentivise this as well? And I think that's something that we could also look at throughout the strategy. And certainly something that we've learned from working with our disability partners and working with our OPDs over the consultation process is also to look at how we can include marginalized groups in our discussions and make sure that they are being given the floor and are able to contribute. And I think one of the added values that we have as a donor as well is our ability to convene people from different parts of the community, disability community together to discuss together and have also that collective voice. I hope that answers your question, Douglas, but it's certainly something that's at the forefront of our mind.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. We appreciate FCDO for continuous support of disability inclusion, and we've seen a number of improvement, number of impact based on the inclusion, number of programs now in bringing on board the inclusion. And that's a plus because even the support of i2i, it has a great impact within the counties that are implementing. And I would really request that you keep on even expanding this program and duplicate it elsewhere, not only in the two counties, but supporting other counties that deserve this program. Thank you so much. And allow me to go to check on the perspective from the Global Disability Summit. And members here, we are looking forward to have a disability summit in February next year. And I will bring on board Jose Vera, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the World Blind Union and a Senior Manager with International Disability Alliance, IDA, working on the Global Disability Summit. Jose has more than 18 years of experience working nationally and internationally in the field of human rights and inclusive development. He is also, he has been working there to ensure that disability inclusion is embedded. Jose is also Chief Executive Officer, as I mentioned, of the World Union. And he also is also the permanent representative of the UN stakeholders group of persons with disability for sustainable development. Jose, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I first want to thank the organizers of the event for giving us the opportunity to share with the audience some of the activities that we are organizing around the Global Disability Summit, and also a particular thanks to my colleagues on the panel for the great presentations. The Global Disability Summit was created back in 2017 by the government of the UK, the government of Kenya, as the first two co-hosts, with the permanent International Disability Alliance as the permanent co-host. But instead of going into too many details about the Global Disability Summit, I really want to share today what I think is one of the most important reflections, and that is how, through the Global Disability Summit, those who almost 5 years ago decided to create this opportunity had in mind as the most important priority to bring OPDs as a key partners for inclusive development. As we know, the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities, not only throughout all the articles, but in particular, the Article 4.3 and furthermore, the General Comment number 7 on Article 4.3 recognizes the importance of organization of persons with disabilities leading a lot of the advocacy and implementation processes of the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. But I think those who decided to put in place the Global Disability Summit thought, what else can be done? What else can we do in order to bridge kind of these two worlds of OPDs and development? And that's how the Global Disability Summit was conceived, as a platform through which organizations of persons with disabilities could interact with development actors in order to advance the agenda of disability rights, in particular in the Global South. And if you see, when we look back at the summit in London in 2018, and actually now that we are preparing the next Global Disability Summit, which will take place in February 2022 under the modality of a virtual event, I think we have not only gone way far more than we expected in including persons with disabilities, but actually somehow transformed how organization of persons with disabilities can influence the development agenda. And let me use one clear example of that. For the Global Disability Summit in 2022, the International Disability Alliance, who is the permanent co-host of the Global Disability Summit, conducted more than 50 national and regional consultations where approximately 1,000 people with disabilities from different groups, from different regions, speaking different languages, with different ethnicities, with different cultural and religious backgrounds, participated and actually informed the three co-hosts, in this case, IDA, the government of Ghana, and the government of Norway, what the most important themes they believe the Global Disability Summit in 2022 should address. And if we see those themes that we can quickly just list them: inclusive education, inclusive health, humanitarian action and climate change, OPD participation, employment and social protection, are not only the issues that the civil society through Organization of Persons with Disabilities have addressed as important for the Global Disability Summit, but even more important, the exercise of consultation permitted the three co-hosts of the Global Disability Summit to realize the importance of OPDs in the development of the Global Disability Summit. And actually, the exercise that we did by consulting all these OPDs brought us to the situation in which we are now, where the Global Disability Summit is more owned by Organization of Persons with Disabilities, where we daily receive more requests of Organization of Persons with Disabilities around how they can participate, what they can do, how they can implement the next set of commitments at the national level. And I think that is a good example of how we started by realizing the importance of OPD as a key actors, as a key partner in inclusive development. But through the Global Disability Summit, we have kind of created a model in which OPDs had the chance to influence the agenda for the summit, hopefully the set of commitments that we will have, when we adopt the new one for the Global Disability Summit, and even more important, when it comes to the implementation of the new set of commitments. With the support of the government of the UK, the Global Disability Summit Secretariat has launched a GDS website in which one of the most important tools is a commitment tracking portal. It's a portal where anyone can go on and check the progress of the different commitments made in London 2018, and hopefully it will be the same for the GDS 2022 starting next year. And again, in that portal, we have given a top priority to OPDs, because we really want OPDs to use that tool in order to, for instance, say, this stakeholder has committed to implement this program in this particular country. And through the portal that we have created on the GDS website, an OPD in any country can go check that progress and connect with that stakeholder and try to support in the implementation of the commitment, and also to advocate for the implementation at the national level of that commitment. So just very simple examples, and I don't want to extend my presentation any longer, but if we see from consultation to advocacy, also as a way of supporting implementation of the commitment, we can see how has been the path from that point in time where OPDs kind of only were there to validate something, to this point now in December 2021, where OPDs had the chance to influence the next Global Disability Summit and has already prepared the field for after February 2022 in the implementation of the new set of commitment. In summary, I think OPDs have now more tools and have now, I would say, a better set of skills to implement the CRPD and the SDGs through, for instance, this Global Disability Summit. And I think that is a good way forward in terms of thinking outside the box on how OPDs can become even more active actors in the implementation of the disability rights agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jose. And that's very useful. It's very useful for us. And we understand that this global summit is going to bring on board a number of stakeholders, including the government. And the question that I wanted to ask is that the first global summit or the last global summit that was conducted has had a number of solutions or the things that we agreed that we're going to achieve. How do you look what we've achieved and what we want to do in the next step? How do you foresee this global summit? What do we need to check on based on our topic of discussion, ensuring DPO's participation, and it is meaningful and effective participation in decision making?
Thank you very much. Actually, if we look at the 2018 summit, after the summit, we produced 2 annual reports summarizing the implementation of the different commitments. Just for your information, but I think it's a critically important piece of information. In 2018, the first Global Disability Summit had 968 commitments made by approximately 170 stakeholders. So you can see that not only it was a great interest shown by many stakeholders, but actually that interest of networking or interaction between OPDs and development actors was translated in one of the most ambitious set of commitments we ever had around disability and development. And the latest report, the one that was launched in March 2021 and covers all of the commitments achieved until December 2019, shows that almost 82% of the 968 commitments made in London were achieved or are under implementation. And for the remaining 18% that were not able to be achieved, either because they were discontinued or because the challenges faced are significantly important, preventing those commitments to be implemented, are mainly the result of the COVID-19 situation that the world faced in 2019 and 2020. So this 82% of, we can say, success around the implementation of the commitments from 2018 are clearly linked to the role that OPDs have played, especially at the national level, in securing the implementation of those commitments. Of course, there is still a lot to be done. We still need to invest more in OPDs. We need to continue developing partnerships between OPDs, but also between OPDs and development actors to equip OPDs, especially those working at the national and subnational level, to implement the different commitments. But I think what these two reports, but particularly the last one, is showing us that for those commitments that have been more successfully implemented are because of the critical support provided by OPDs. And actually there are some case studies in that report that shows what I'm saying. Good examples of that activities, for instance, the activities that the European Disability Forum has developed around the GDS 2018 and the different commitments that they have been implemented. But what I'm trying to say here is that when we look at OPDs and how they can meaningfully participate, we can, I guess, divide the answer in like two clear components. One is OPDs realizing that they need to be better prepared and better equipped for a more effective implementation of the different programs. And if we realize as OPDs that we need to slowly move or increase not only our advocacy capacity, but also our skills around being key partners for the implementation of programs, et cetera, we understand that it's more effective.
Thank you so much. And I just want to take you back where you mentioned about there's need to invest a lot on OPDs for change, and also that one, and also that is, I know is connected with the government in terms of giving friendly environment to DPOs. How best can this summit support to strengthen the commitments and to ensure that there is greater investment into OPDs? How best can we mobilize a number of stakeholders, including government, including donors and private sectors, foundations, to bring on board in this summit to ensure that there's a greater commitment, there's a greater investment in OPDs based on the needs within the community?
Thank you. So the shortest answer to your question is we now have a menu of commitments. The Global Disability 2022 has last month published a list of commitments that stakeholders can make for the next Global Disability Summit. And one of the themes, as I said before, is OPD engagement, so meaningful participation of OPDs in different programs. So I think we now need more OPDs supporting governments or advocating with governments and multilateral agencies, so these stakeholders can formulate better commitments. And better commitments are not only about budget or about investment, but are also about putting in the center of the picture OPDs, especially at the national level.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jose. And your participation and contribution to this webinar is very useful and important. Allow me to give members time to provide some of the question and answer. Kindly, if you have any question, just write on the Q&A so that I will ask them. And I want to thank all the panelists for this webinar. And I will just take some few questions for you. Then I will give it to you. Let me start with Henna. Henna, we started discussing about the participation of persons with disability, especially the DPOs in Bangladesh and Kenya, in reference to the current project going on innovation to inclusion. The question is coming from, is asking, in Bangladesh, there is ongoing advocacy to the government to implement policy providing funding for persons assistance, for personal assistant or caregivers. How can we ensure DPOs are meaningfully engaged in this development? The question is, in Bangladesh, there is ongoing advocacy to the government to implement a policy that provides funding for personal assistants or caregivers. How can we ensure that DPOs are meaningfully engaged in this development? Hannah, are you around?
Nice questions. Actually, you know that when we started the i2i program, during this program, we conducted a seminar or a lot of activities we did nationally or locally. During this program, during these activities, we feel, all DPUs feel, who are persons with disability, who are severe persons with disability, their needs actually caregiver. But our government in Bangladesh has no caregiver policy. This is when we talked that relevant government sector in these issues. First of all, we conduct advocacy seminar, and we proposed the minister and Department of Social Welfare. And finally they agreed. Okay, then your DPOs give a policy draft. Then we'll next forward. Okay, through the when they assure us, when they promised us to make a draft policy for caregiver, then we all DPOs here, we are working 10 DPOs in Bangladesh. Several times we seated and many consultation FCD for persons with disabilities in 3 regions Bangladesh, and finally we got a scenario of caregivers policy in this month, and within few months maybe we will submit the draft policy to Department of Social Welfare. You know that it is a processing. I hope the draft or policy will be passed by Department of Ministry. Then it will be very helpful for persons with disabilities, actually caregiver policy. You know that here who are blind, who are more severe persons with disability, they cannot any support for caregiver assistance like that. So it is very important for persons with disabilities and other perspective, you know that in employment sector or employees, they are not agreed to give the assistance for persons with disabilities. If the government has a law, caregiver policy, that will be followed the policy. That's why we are raising voice. That's why we are trying to drafting policy for the caregiver. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's also very important that most countries, especially what's happening in Kenya, you get that the DPOs are moving into network alliances or consortiums so that they do a joint advocacy. And the advocacy should not fight the government. the advocacy is to work with the government in equal partnership for change. Because if we start fighting the government, they will not listen to us. So we work with them harmoniously. And the person who was asking this is asking, how best can we meaningfully be engaged? So if we work with the government as a team, then we tell them they will ensure that our people are on the table of discussion and ensuring discussion. And thank you so much for answering that question. Let me take back this to, I want if I can get Rachel or Rachel from FCDO to tackle this question, and also Joseph. One of the members is asking, how best do we work towards achieving data of various disability in order to meet this vision of disability inclusion and sustainability in our public participation? And data is very important in every aspect, because we use data, we use research, evidence-based. That is when we can do effective advocacy. And the government listen to the data. If you tell them this is what's happening and this is the evidence, then they work. So the question, that's why one of the members is asking, how best do we work towards achieving data for various disabilities in order to meet vision of disability inclusion and sustainability in our public participation? Welcome.
It's a great question. And it's something that I would also like Harriet to input on a little, because she really does have so much expertise in working on ground level. But I would like to reflect that data and evidence is something that is a priority for us. It is one of the 4 key principles we believe are essential, which are rights, all human rights and fundamental freedoms for all people with disabilities; participation, which is the leadership, representation and inclusion of people with disabilities and their organizations. And then we have choice, making sure people with disabilities not just have access to, but also have choice of quality opportunities and outcomes. And that final one is visibility. And that's where we're really talking about how important data and evidence is in everything that we do. The more data we have on the situation of people with disabilities, the more evidence we have of impact, the easier it is for us to improve outcomes, to make sure we're doing what works, and make sure that we have in our programs the right things that are hopefully working towards having that two-way participation that I would love in the long term to see that we're working as co-creators. But that, of course, there are challenges in getting there. In terms of how we get there, I don't want to say these are the steps, because I don't think that we ourselves know yet. And what I think we need to do is I think we need to spend some time, which is our priority over the next year, learning and listening about what we're already doing, what the challenges are, and sessions like this are really important to that. And that's when we're going to start to build up. Well, we know what we need to do in the very short term. We know where we want to be in the long term, but what can we do realistically and pragmatically together with people with disabilities and their organizations to develop those steps? But I'd like to pass over to Harriet, because she herself is a senior program manager and works specifically on our capacity building program. So she has some really great experience here.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And just to add to your points around data, I think one thing that we can do as FCDO is use our different levers and different ways that we have to implement programs and to influence, to encourage others to also gather data. Some of you may be aware of our program, the Girls Education Challenge. And through the latest phase of that program, the FCDO and our kind of consortium partners have been really driving and encouraging all partners to use the Washington Group questions to collect data, some of which have not done before. And the impact of this was transformational in terms of the partners themselves understanding more about the about the impact of their individual programs on people with disabilities and things that they needed to do differently to meet the needs of people with disabilities and encourage more participation. Within FCDO, we also have the opportunity to use our relationships with organisations like the UN or with in-country governments to encourage them to implement the Washington Group questions in their various surveys. And I know that this is something that our disability partners and OPDs have also been advocating for. So I think there is an opportunity for us all to work together towards this goal of improving data collection and quality. And I think, as Rachel is saying, we don't have all of the answers, but we're really keen to work with our i2i partners and with you all to figure out how we can improve the quality of data collection. I hope that helps. Thanks.
And just to say one final thing on that is that in the strategy itself, all the areas, all our themes, so education, humanitarian action, health, social protection, economic empowerment, have all specifically included that they are going to do more on data in their programs. So it is something across all of our organization we are really trying to do more on and do better. And we know it's not just the formation of organizations for persons with disability. It is making sure that they are sustainable. It is making sure they have capacity, and it is making sure they can function to do what they do well. And we explicitly recognize, and I as a person with disabilities myself, that people with disabilities are the experts in their own lives. And so we know that this is really fundamental to everything we are doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And that's very great. You talk about the participation, joint co-creation, and data. Those are very key things in the development. Let me give Jose to not more than 1 minute, kindly. You can react on that. So that, because my time is over, I want to close this. Jose, if you are around. Okay. Think is not around. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone. We are coming to the end of this webinar, and let me take this opportunity to thank everyone for participating. Huge thank you to the panelists for your participation. The number of outcomes that we are going to pile up, and it's going to inform our work, both locally, nationally, and externally. So we believe that this discussion will move beyond, and we want to see a lot of changes in the global summit to inform what the inclusion will be in the next few years coming. Lastly, let me remind you that kindly you will get a survey at the end of this meeting. You will get a survey, a short survey. Kindly ensure that you file it. I don't want to forget to thank UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office for continuous support, and also the i2i consortium, because i2i program is a big consortium, and also organizers and panelists and the entire team, including our captioner and interpreters. Thank you so much. I'm Andrew. God bless you. Next time. Thank you so much. All the best. Bye.
Bye.